Okay, welcome everybody. I hope that this will go well. I wasn't able to prepare as much as usual, but let's see. So we're in the middle of a sugi. We're on the Chaf, what is it? Chaf Dalet Amud Beis. Chaf Dalet Amud Beis on the bottom, and the subject was a subject which is not really Nugea to yevamos. I didn't settle yet, why this sugi comes in, but the mission was about if somebody marries somebody that is suspicious. Means the Mishnah had two cases. The beginning was about a shifcha or a goya, that there's a rumor about him that he had relations with a shifcha Canaanist or with a goya. So it says even if they became Jewish, freed or converted, but he shouldn't marry because if he marries her, it's going to be reinforcing the rumor that seems like it was true, and keep away from bad rumors. And the second part of the Mishnah was if there was a rumor that he had relations with a married woman, it's not only a question of a rumor, it's of a bad name. It's also usher, that it's actually usher. I mean, the first case, even if he did have relations with the Goya, if she converted, it would be mutter to him to marry her. But in the second case, where it's Aisha Sish, that she was a married woman, it's usher for her, if she did it willingly, as Chaim David mentioned yesterday, it's usher for her to remain with the husband. It's also usher for her to have relations more with the Boel, with the adulterer. So here, it says even if he married her, he should not marry her, even if after the husband divorces her. And here it says the case is that the husband divorced her because of this. So he's not the adulterer, or the suspect adulterer is not allowed to marry her. And if he did, he has to divorce her. The adulterer has to divorce even if he married. And yesterday, with the subject we went into, that Rav says that it's only with Aiden, that you only make him divorce her if there were actual witnesses, not just a rumor. A rumor is not enough to force him to divorce. Again, we're not talking about the husband, we're talking about adulterer or suspect adulterer. So Rav says that a suspect adulterer, but he denies it, is not enough. The rumor is not enough to force him to divorce her if he does marry her. The husband divorced her, and then this suspect adulterer married her. Do we force him to divorce her? So Rav says only if there are witnesses, then we force him to divorce her because he's usher to live with the woman that he committed adultery when she was married. And the Gemara challenges that. Yesterday, the end of the Gemara was that we brought down a brisa that said no. There's even if there are no Eidim, the rumor alone is enough that we are going to force him to divorce her. The rumor alone. And over there, there was a consideration if there are children. As Rashi learns, if there are children to the original husband, so by making the suspect adulterer to divorce that woman, it's going to strengthen the rumor, and people will say about the children that were born to the first husband that maybe they're not really his children, maybe they're mamzerim, they were born to the adulterer. So therefore, if there are no edim, in that case, we're not going to force him to divorce her, but otherwise we would. That's against Rav. Rav said that in all cases you don't force him to divorce her, only if there are witnesses. And the Gemara said that what we left off yesterday was that Rav agrees to that also. But he sees in the Mishnah that it's talking about that Bezdin, Hotziyuha. The word Hotziyuha, the Gemara says, means that Bezdin forced him to divorce, to force the husband to divorce his wife. Bezdin doesn't force the husband to divorce his wife only if there's mamish evidence. A rumor alone wouldn't be enough to force the husband to divorce. So since the Mishnah is talking about that Bezdin with Eidim, that's why he says it's talking about Eidim, not because the halacha wouldn't be true. At this point, till the Yevamos, we left out the Yevamos yesterday, we're up to here now. So until here, the Gemara said that Rav agrees that you don't force the adulterer to divorce if he married her, if there are no Eidim, that I lost my train of thought, that you don't force if there are no Eidim.
Right. That was your original.
I'm sorry. 1 second. I'm sorry, I lost it. At this point, the Gemara is saying Rav agrees that you do force, even if there are no Eidim, if there are no children. If there are children, so then we take into consideration the children, so then we're not going to force him to divorce. But if there are no children, we would force him to divorce on the rumor alone. That was the first step. Now we continue now. This is going further. If you want, I could say that no, Rav sticks to what he says, that if there are no Eidim, you don't force him to divorce, even if there are no children. Even if there are no children. I said it right. Even if there are no children, if there are no Eidim, you don't force the adulterer to divorce if he married her. By had this Bryce, the Bryce said that you do. If there are no children, you do divorce into divorce, even on a rumor alone. Hani mas naisa Rebbe. These Bryces that you brought, we brought two proofs. Now I just said over the second one is only Rebbe. It means the machlokes. Like Moshe says, machlokes between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. How much do we worry about the rumor? Do we consider and worry about the rumor and take it into possibility? So Rebbe is machmir, and he holds that even on a rumor, we're going to force the adulterer to divorce the woman that he married, and Rabbana will argue, and Rav holds like the Rabbana. The Tanya. The Gemara now brings a brisa.
Even there are children?
If there are Edim, I'm not sure what you mean to say. If there are Edim, there are Edim. If there are no Edim, then you force it.
Just rumor.
So we bought a brisa that says that if there are no children, you force him to divorce, even if there are no Edim, if there are no children. And now we're saying that not simple. That's only Rebbe, but the Rabban might argue and be more lenient. And even if there are no children, on a rumor alone, you're not going to force them to divorce. Again, Rashi here talks about, in the upcoming Gemara, Rashi talks about even forcing the husband to divorce his wife on a rumor that his wife was Mazana. The poskim all go against Rashi. Some even have a different gears in Rashi. So the Pasha says that a husband is not forced to divorce his wife on a rumor, according to anybody. Only the issue is the adulterer that married the woman after the husband divorced. Do we force him to divorce her if there's a rumor? Titania, Rochel Yosef Vishoch Ageres Besino, Amir Rebbe, hold the Mukhor Adava Teitze. The Gemara is going to say a few examples, 3 examples about something that looks very, very suspicious, very bad, very disgusting. And Rebbe is going to say that's a reason, Teitze, that's the reason that the woman should be divorced. And we're learning now, not like Rashi or different gears in Rashi, that it means that the adulterer, not enough reason that the husband should have to divorce her, only if there's mamish evidence, but the adulterer, if he marries her, if the husband divorces her, and the adulterer marries her, we force him to divorce her. The first thing is that a peddler was a suspicious character. He came around to sell to women cosmetics, and he had relationships with the women, and it wasn't good. And he's a suspect. But he comes in out of the house, and he sees that his wife is getting dressed. That doesn't look good. She's putting on a sinar. A sinar is like an undergarment, and that looks very suspicious. So Rebbe says looks disgusting, and therefore, if the husband's going to divorce her, and this Rochel, this peddler now wants to marry her, and he married her, he has to divorce her because it looks very suspicious. And the Gemara is going to say they are one and argue. This is only Rebbe. Rebbe says on a rumor alone, we force the adulterer to divorce, the suspect adulterer to divorce, not a vadai. If it's a vadai adulterer, then no question, everyone will say he has to divorce. And the husband also has to divorce. But we're talking about a suspect adulterer. It looks fishy, it looks very suspicious. So Rebbe says that this adulterer has to divorce even if he married her. Another case that looks very suspicious. What is it exactly? Rashi says a pshat. There's another pshat. They say that there's semen. There's semen on in the area. The kila would be the curtain that's around the bed, like some kind of a drapings, and they find over there that there was semen. It might be this husband's semen from that maybe, but it looks suspicious. Also, some say something about the rochel again. The rochel comes out. He finds the peddler coming out, and he sees the book here. It says saliva, but we'll say that doesn't mean saliva. It's just a clean way to say semen. A third case, also, all these cases are not clear exactly what they are, but the point is that something looks very suspicious. Something about the shoes. The shoes are not in place. The Gemara first thinks that the shoes are upside down, and the Gemara says that whatever reason that should show that there's something suspicious happening or happened. But the Gemara right away interjects. First of all, look whose shoes it is. If the question is that it's his shoes, so look whose shoes it is. He left the shoes over there, whatever it might have been. No, it doesn't mean that. That the place where the shoes usually are not in the right place. The husband sees that his shoes are not where he usually leaves them. So something's happening. Something had happened. Whatever the case is, whatever the examples are, it's also not so clear. The Meforshim say it's not so clear what the examples are, but all of them look very suspicious, very disgusting, and therefore Rebbe says that the adulterer, if he would marry her subsequently, he forced him to divorce. So what did the Gemara find? That there's machlokes. Rebbe is the one who's very machmir. A rumor alone, a rumor or something like this, that's not a rumor, but it's like suspicious, is enough to force the adulterer to divorce. But the Rabbanan would argue, and Rav doesn't have to agree with Rebbe. Rav holds like the Rabbanan, that only witnesses would be enough to force the adulterer to divorce that woman. But if not, he maybe shouldn't marry her because it strengthens the rumor. But if he did marry her, we're not going to force him to divorce. Chaim
I'm
David,
just trying to have a question is there's LP Eidachad. How's he going to find Ronnie to stand by him?
I'm not sure what you mean to say. We didn't talk about.
Like,
We didn't say mention. We
he's
didn't say a
he's the
word.
only witness.
We didn't say a word about a witness. We didn't say a
How's he
word.
going to get the? How are we saying that we're going to force the peddler to leave him? Who's going to ma'id?
If we know, how do we know this much?
Yeah,
how do we know?
these
Okay, so we have
details?
Adam. We found
He's
Adam.
the only one who's saying.
Who's he?
The husband.
The husband says the Adam to come in and see. Look at this. This is not, there's a Sheikh Basra or he's coming. Or she's,
bring something.
he's saying that. How would he able to prove that?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's his
Okay.
word.
It's not, okay. Chaim Dov is asking that. How could we force the peddler, the Suffolk adulterer, if the husband is the only one who's testifying that he came home and he saw his wife getting dressed and he was leaving the house?
Exactly.
So nice question. I don't know the answer.
Maybe guess.
Okay, only if they're Adam. Okay, I don't know. The Gemara ends off. We said a second ago, there's a machlokes going on, and the Gemara now passed by both of them. Rav was the one who's makel that says you don't force him to divorce only if there's witnesses, and Rebbe said no, even on a suspicion or rumor is also enough. And the Gemara says halach like Rav, halach like Rebbe. How could that be? That's a contradiction between the two halachas. They're arguing on each other. Low kasha, habakala the pasuk, habakala the low pasuk. It depends what kind of rumor. There's a rumor. A color means a rumor. A color is a rumor. But there's a rumor that doesn't stop. It's like a continuous rumor. A continuous rumor has a lot of strength. If it's a rumor and then it dies down, then it's got some again. That's not such a big rumor. So by a strong rumor, we are going to rely on. We're going to do like Rebbe, that's machmir, that we're going to force the adulterer to divorce. But if it's a color of the pasuk, the pasuk that had interruptions, intervals, so then we're going to do like Rav, that a rumor like that is not enough to force the adulterer to divorce.
Where's the word kala? I don't see it.
It's the first one on the line.
Huh? I see. That's like a voice. In other words,
A rumor. Color the pasuk, color the low pasuk. A color the pasuk means that it had interruptions, so that's not so strong. A color the low pasuk, if it's an uninterrupted rumor, that has a lot of strength. The Gemara says, "Color the low pasuk, v'leka edim kirebi." Color the pasuk, v'ika edim kirab. If it's an uninterrupted rumor, even if there are no edim, it'll do like Rebbe, that we're going to force him to divorce. If it's a interrupted rumor, so then only if there are edim are we going to force him to divorce, like Rav says. So we pass like both of them. It depends what kind of rumor. The Gemara wants to know how long is called an uninterrupted rumor. We call it the lapasuk kam. How much does it have to be uninterrupted? Amr Abaya, Amr Li'aim, Dumi de Masa, Yomo Palga. Abai said, my mother said, they said the mother was not really his mother. Always it says Abai's mother died in childbirth. So it means the one who raised him. She told me that the suspicion of the city, the talk of the city is question what the word Dumi means, but that's a day and a half. If a rumor goes for a day and a half, that's a strong rumor, and it didn't die down in between. So that's a strong rumor, and you have to be choshesh for that. And if the adulterer married that woman, we force him to divorce. When we say that it's a strong rumor, it's only for that day and a half. It was uninterrupted. But if it was interrupted in between, so we said that interrupted rumor is not so strong. It had to be that it was going strong for a day and a half. But when we say that an interruption that causes the rumor not to be so strong is only if we don't see why it was dying down. But if we see that there are people that are interested in countering that rumor, so then it's artificial. The fact that it was dying down is because people were scared. Because somebody came around and said everyone should hush up, stop talking about it, and that it doesn't show that it was really dying down. It was only because they were forced to. That's not called dying down. That will be considered a continuous rumor if it lasted for a day and a half, even with coerced hushing up. This whole thing about a rumor is only if there are no enemies to this person that want to make a bad name for him. But if there are enemies that want to make a bad name, so then we don't choshesh for the rumor at all, because we know that people might have made this rumor about him. So that's the end of more or less the end of the subject. And we came out that when do we force the adulterer to divorce if he married the woman that got divorced from her husband on account of him? So if there's a strong rumor that goes for a day and a half without being interrupted, and it wasn't invented by anybody that might hate him, so then we'll hold like Rebbe that on a rumor alone we force him to get divorced from that woman. And if not, only aid them. Only if there are witnesses are we going to force him. And again, we're going like all the other Rishonim that it's not talking about forcing the husband to divorce. The husband only has to divorce if their mom is that she was Mazana. like a regular sota that there's even a sota to which she was warned and she went into seclusion with Adam. But without Adam, just the rumor alone doesn't force the husband to divorce his wife. But here we're talking about, Holzig is talking about forcing the adulterer or the suspect adulterer to divorce that woman if he marries her.
So what does it mean that the law pasik beinu veining? What's it mean?
That it didn't stop in the meanwhile. It didn't get interruptions in the meanwhile.
No.
During that day and a half.
So that's considered a strong rumor.
Right. New Gemara. I mean, it's going to come back to our subject still. Tanan Nasa. We learned the Mishnah. Hamotzi. Where's that Mishnah? It says on the side. Where's that? It says Gittin Ksubis. I think maybe the main. I forgot what the main Mishnah is. If it's a Gittin Ksubis, everybody knows. Hamotzi Asishto Mishum Shema Lo Yachzim Lo Yachzim. Come. Mishum Neder Lo Yachzim. If somebody divorces his wife because of a rumor, because a bad name came out about it, she was Mazana. Not Adam, but the reason why he divorced her is because there's bad news going around about it that she was committed adultery. No witnesses, and he wasn't forced by Bezdin, but he didn't want to have such a wife. And he says that the reason why he's divorcing was because of that. So he's not allowed to marry her back. Even if he has second thoughts, he wants to marry her back, he's not allowed to. Rashi brings down the reason is because if he's going to be allowed to take her back, so then it might happen that she'll marry somebody else. After he divorces her, she'll marry somebody else, and then it'll be
Impossible.
misbarrier that the rumor was not true, and he says, "I never meant to divorce her in such a case. I only divorced her because it is rumor. But if it's not true, I never would have divorced her. I love her. I would never would have divorced her." Then it comes out that she wasn't a divorce, and she married somebody else. She's a married woman because in retrospect the divorce wasn't a divorce, and that's going to come out that the kids are mamzerim from the second husband. It's going to be a big mess. So we tell them if you're divorcing her, then there's no backs, and that way he's divorcing b'leiv shalem, and he can't say later on that I didn't mean it. Also mishum neder lo yachzir, the same thing if he said that because she makes a lot of vows, she makes oaths the whole day. I don't want such a wife. So also he's not allowed, he has to say he's not going to take her back ever. Because the same idea that if she's going to get a het in the dorim, she made some kind of net that she's not going to put on whatever, she's not going to shower, she's not going to put on perfume, whatever it might be. That's bothersome to him. She doesn't eat, she afflicts herself, so he doesn't want to be married to her. But if later on she'll get a heter, then he'll say I never meant it. And the same problem could happen that she might have married somebody else in the interim, and then he's going to say I never meant it, and it wasn't a get, and the kids will be mamzerim from the second husband. That's the Mishnah over there.
Excuse me, that would be different than burning the dinner. Why is this different than anything else that he just doesn't like about her? Because it's a neder?
Because there's a possibility that it's going to be retroactively taken down. That he can't, when he says that he is divorcing her because of these reasons, it could come out that it wasn't true, the Shemra wasn't true, and the neder could be retroactively nullified. So there was no neder. But
how come we say if she burns the food, maybe he decides burnt food isn't so bad, or she learned how not to burn.
But he can't say that I wouldn't have done it. He did it. By the neder, he could say if I would have known she's going to get a heter one day, then I wouldn't have done it. But here he can't say it because he knew all the facts. All the facts are in front of him, and he decided to divorce. He could say, "I want her back now," but he can't take back. He can't say, "I never would have divorced her." He did divorce her.
So the neder is
Does it make sense, Levi Yaakov?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody?
So the neder is chal, and he can't retract.
We're saying not the neder. We're saying that he can't retract. He can't retract the get. He can't take her back anymore. He can't say, "I never divorced her." He can't say that I never would have divorced her.
I just wanted to add on the Kuda. In those days, when anyone just comes to Bezdin and wants to get divorced, they don't let him get divorced on the spot. They try to push him out of it, whatever. So it wasn't just in a bad mood he got divorced. They probably thought it out and they explained to Bezdin why he didn't.
Oh, those days it was easier to get. Now nowadays it's hard. In those days it was easier that he didn't have to go to Bezdin. He could have to aid him. So that's it. We bring this down because we want to go back to our sugya. Over there it says that he asked that he shouldn't marry her. Lo yasir, he shouldn't marry her. Shouldn't marry her back again. They made this takana. The reason why he said lo yasir is in order that he should take it seriously and he shouldn't be able to say I never meant it. But what if he did marry her? Can he stay married to her? Kanas, Maoshi Yossi. We tell him don't marry her. But he did. He married her back. Are we going to obligate him to divorce her? Are we going to force him to divorce her again? There's two cases.
What's
Somebody-
kanas mean in this
Kanas
case?
means he married her. Kanas.
Wait a minute, the one he divorced, he married again?
Yes.
Okay.
We would have told him when he got divorced, when he divorced, we told him no backseas. He can't take her back again. But he did. Is it a marriage or do we force him to divorce her? Amalei Tanina. So he brought on our Mishnah that says in these cases where there's a rumor about a woman that she was Mazana. This is talking about adulterer. Somebody was suspected of living with a married woman, and the husband divorced her, and now he wants to marry her. He's not allowed to marry her, and even if he did, we forced him to divorce. This is our mission that we're learning the whole time, that we forced the adulterer to divorce the woman that he married. Amalei, so here also says, let's go over there. We forced him. So here also, we said lo yach, so don't take her back. If the husband took her back after we divorced her, also he said if that Mishnah says even though he married her, he has to divorce her. So too in this Mishnah of Shemra and Neder, also if he married her, he has to divorce her. Amalei midam, what's the comparison? Over there, we just finished saying before, the earlier Gemara says that the word hotzia should really read hotziuha, not that he divorced her. The husband didn't divorce her on his own. The husband divorced her because Bezdin forced him. So over there, when Bezdin forced him, means that there's Aiden. When does Bezdin force? The one said before earlier. When does Bezdin force the husband to divorce? Only if they're Aiden. That's why we don't let him, because he's also to live with her.
Well, that's what Hotzia.
Hotziyuha with a vav means that Bezdin forced him, took her away from him. How do they do that? They force him to divorce because there's Aiden. That she's mamash asatim. If she's mazana and there are edim, so of course he's not allowed to stay with her. And even if he married, he has to divorce her. But hacha hotzia, here the case was he divorced her on his own. There was no edim, and therefore it's not a proof from our Mishnah that he has to divorce her. That the adulterer, and here is no adulterer. There's no riot to our case where the husband took her back after he wasn't supposed to, that he has to divorce her. The Rabba Bar of Nachman, Masnisanami hotzia tanan. But the one who did bring the proof, he had the Gersa and the Mishnah Hotzia. Means even though Rav said the Gersa should be Hotziua with Eidim, but it's not Muchach. It could be the Mishnah is talking about that the husband divorced her on his own, not because they were Eidim. And still it says that the adulterer, there's no Eidim, that there was a Znus. Also, we forced the adulterer to divorce. So also in our case, when the husband took her back and he's not supposed to, maybe also he has to divorce her. But still the Gemara is not happy with the comparison. In our Mishnah, when it's talking about that we forced him to divorce her, who are we talking about? The adulterer. The suspect adulterer that took this woman after her husband divorced her, so we forced him to divorce her because of the fact that there was a rumor that there was a znus, and she's usher to him. But so over there we can understand that even with the evidence, he has to divorce. Even if you say on a rumor alone, before we had a machlokes, on a rumor alone, we said if it's a strong rumor, we are going to force the adulterer to divorce. But over here, it's the husband. Here it's not so disgusting. Here what happened? The husband divorced. So we made a takana that he shouldn't take her back, and the order that it should be serious. He shouldn't think tomorrow I'm going to say I didn't mean it. But it's not a proof to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is not as bad as over there. The bowl is disgusting. Here it's not disgusting, the husband taking her back. Amalei, Shapidami. He says, no, it is comparable because the terminology of the Mishnah. He's not going with the longest, he's going with words. The words seem to say that there's no difference. That if you say the Chacham made a takana not to marry, so even if you're married, you see that even with the Eved, they say you have to divorce also. But the Gemara says, no, there is a difference. Over there, when the adulterer marries her, it's strengthening the rumor that he really did have relations with her before the divorce. You see that they like each other, they want to get married. So, and if he marries her, it's strengthening the rumor that was. That's why we'll force him to divorce her. But over here, on the contrary, when the husband takes her back, there was a shemra, there was a rumor, and the husband decided to divorce her. And then he decides to take her back. It must be because he verified that the rumor was false. So there, we don't mind if he takes her back. It means we say don't, when you divorce her, do it for permanent. So you should think well before he does it. But over here, but if he does take her back, we're not going to make him divorce her because if anything, it shows that the call was verified that it wasn't such a bad story after all. The Mishnah continues about the next Mishnah continues about the subject about is there a chashash that somebody's going to marry a woman because he had ulterior motives and getting her divorced. Before we spoke about the one who was suspect of committing adultery while she was married, So we say he's not allowed to marry her afterwards. That's a serious chashash, because if he was taka mazana, he would not be allowed to marry her. Here it has a related subject. Maybe get from Dina Sayam. Somebody, the halacha is when there's a get, when there's a divorce and it's brought from overseas, and Dina Sayam is talking about from Chutz La'aretz, and that's the Gemara in Gittin, the first Mishnah, maybe get, and over there talks about the reason why the shliach, the messenger that brings the get, has to testify that he saw the signatures, that it was written and signed in his presence. Usually a shliach does send the shliach, he's the messenger. But here we have to have verification that they knew the halachas of lishma. When they wrote it and signed it, they knew the lishma. And therefore, then there's certain chashash that sometimes that they didn't do the get right. So the shliach has to also testify that I saw it written and I saw that it was signed. And that's the sugya over there. Could be other reasons also. But now comes the very interesting thing happened, that he brings the get, shliach, he brings the get, he testifies, and she gets divorced from her husband, and then he marries her. He wants to marry her. The shliach wants to marry her. So it doesn't look so good. It looks like maybe that there was something he wanted her to get divorced in order to be able to marry her. The shliach himself is interested in marrying her. So lo yiseh ishto. So the shliach should not marry that divorced woman, since he was a help. He was relied upon in the divorce process. We want to make sure that there shouldn't be any ulterior motives, and he shouldn't think that he's going to marry her. So he's not allowed to marry her. Another case, meis or haraktiv or haraknu, also lo yiseh ishto. Somebody came to testify that the husband died. Then he wants to marry her. He testifies the husband died, you can get married. And then he says, here I am, I want to marry you. So we don't want that, because it could be that he's testifying, it looks like an ulterior motive over here. Or if he said, I killed him. So also he happens to be dead. I want him, and then after he testifies, the woman's free to marry. President says, okay, she can get married, but because of his testimony, the one's going to talk about is it a good testimony or not. If he says he killed him, if he killed him, he's saying he's a Russia. That's going to be today's sugya. But take it for just this one point, that he's testifying that he's dead because I killed him. I know that he's dead. So then he wants to marry her. Also, we don't let him marry. Haraknu, not only I, but we, a whole group, we killed them together as a group. Also the same thing. The one's going to talk about that. All these cases, he cannot marry because we see an ulterior motive, maybe. Maybe the reason he's testifying is because he wants to marry, and it's not a good testimony. Means the Mishnah that says he's not allowed to marry her. Tanakama said he's not allowed to marry her, but it's mashma that everybody else could marry her. It means she's free. The testimony is a good testimony that he's dead. But only issue is the witness himself. That's what the Tanakama held. Rabbi says sometimes this kind of testimony is not good at all, and nobody could marry her. If he says I killed him, then not only he cannot marry her, nobody can marry her. It's not a good testimony, because since he's saying that he killed him, so he's saying that he's a Russia, that he's a Rotzeach, he's a murderer. So then he's not a good witness. Not a good witness. But if he said we killed him, so then she could. Well, the Gemara is going to ask, what is the difference? If there's a band of murderers and they kill together, what's the difference? So the Gemara is going to talk about that. But the end of the Mishnah is talking about if it's a good testimony at all, not about him. But the main part of the Mishnah is what we said before, that if we see some kind of a possible ulterior motive in the testimony, we don't allow him to do that ulterior motive. If he testifies, we do accept his testimony, but then afterwards he wants to marry her, we don't allow him to marry her. The Gemara says in the first case about the get, the Mishnah only has concern with the shliach who brings a get. Only if it's in a case where he has to say you need his testimony to say that he saw it written and signed. Then we say don't marry you don't marry that woman. But if it would have been in a case where you don't have to say he's just a shliach, like in Eretz Yisrael, that over there everybody knows the halachas of lishma. So then you don't have to say he just brings the get. So then he is allowed to marry. We're not relying on him for anything. You don't need his testimony. He's not testifying. He just brings the get. So then he could marry the divorced woman. But the question is, in the case when he testifies that he died, the Gemara says even also over there we're not relying on his testimony. He's one witness, and usually one witness is not trusted. The reason why we trust one witness is because we're not trusting him. It's because a woman alone, we tell the woman, don't marry only if you know for sure that the husband died. Do your homework. Because if not, that's what the Gemara says, that if a woman gets married because her husband died, and then it comes out that when he comes back, then we throw the book at her. That it's a mamzer and she loses her ksuba, a whole 25 things over there that happened to a woman who married because her husband died. And Eid Echad. She's not, we're saying that we tell the woman, don't trust the Eid. You make sure that it's true. So the Gemara is asking if that's so. So we're not relying on the Eid either. When the Eid comes and says that the husband died, it's not really him that we're relying on, it's really the woman's investigation. And still we say that he cannot marry. If you're saying that if it's not his testimony that we're relying on, so he should be allowed to marry. So how come here we don't allow him to marry? The Gemara says, Hasam leka ksava, hacha ika ksava. It's still better that by the get, when he brings a get, even he's the shliach. The document itself is a testimony. It means we don't need him at all. When he comes to testify that the husband died, even though it's true, that's together, a combination with the fact that the woman is going to investigate, but still he's saying something. It's still his testimony. You need a echad plus the woman. But and he has nothing to prove it. He has no document to be able to prove it. It's only his word. But when he comes with a get, there's a document. So he didn't make it up. He didn't forge a document. So that would be too much to do to forge a document. We're not cautious for that. There's the ADEM. We could verify it. So over there, since there's a document that he has, so then we not relying on him at all, and therefore, and then he could marry in Eretz Yisrael. We don't need his testimony. He comes in Eretz Yisrael with a get. He's a shliach in Eretz Yisrael. That in Eretz Yisrael you don't have to say Fanei Nechtam. You don't have to testify that it was written. The shliach doesn't have to testify that it was written before him. But by Chutz La'aretz that they don't know the Shema, we want the testimony that it was done the Shema. So the shliach has to testify, I saw it written and signed. So over there that you're relying on his testimony, we don't allow him to marry the woman because it was his testimony that's helping us out. But in Eretz Yisrael, where he has a document and he's not saying anything, and his document is a good proof that it's really a get. He didn't make it up. So therefore he could marry her. Over there, Gemara is talking about something else, a different reason that also you see that we'll make more by testimony of a get than the testimony of death, because by the get, there's a ksav, there's a document that shows that's a proof. So therefore, we're not relying on him at all. The next thing it talks about the end of the Mishnah, where he testifies that the husband died, or that I killed him, we killed him. So Tanna Kama says she could get married, but she can't marry him, because since it's his testimony that's permitting her, there's ulterior motive. But the Tanna Kama holds that she could marry out, that she's Bezdin accepts the testimony and she could marry, just she can't marry him. And Rabbi Yehuda argued on that point. Who knew the lo yises ishto? The Mishnah is mashma that only he cannot marry, but everybody else could marry. And Rabbi Yehuda argues. Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah says that no, she can't marry because she can marry anybody because he said I killed. And that's the most kasha. Rav Yosef, Ploni Ravani Lonsi, who v'achim istafin lahor. But it's only Rasha Huva Torah Omer Al Tashas Yatchem Rasha Liyosei Chamas. Rav Yosef is talking about testimony against somebody that he committed homosexuality. Ravani. To be Rovea means that to commit a relationship with a man, that's called Rovea. So if somebody goes to Bezdin and says that this person, he forced me, I don't know if it's called rape, if it's called rape also, I don't know what terminology in English, but if he forced me and he committed homosexuality with me, so he's an aid. The victim himself could be a witness against the attacker. And you have to have another aid. You have to have somebody else. He's a good aid. The victim himself is a good witness. But if he says, that I agree to it, I agreed to commit homosexuality with him, so then he's not a good aid. Rashahu, because he's testifying on himself that he's wicked, so he's not a kosher aid. If it's true that he was agreed to it, so then he's not a kosher aid. That you can't take a Russia to be a witness. So that's what Rabbi Yosef says. So the Mishnah's kasha is that Tanna Kama doesn't make sense. Like is right, that if somebody comes and says, I killed your husband, I killed him, so we shouldn't accept the testimony because he's saying that he's a Retzach, he's a murderer. So Tanna Kama is very difficult. Tanna Kama says that you do trust him. Just he personally cannot marry her because there's might be ulterior motive in his testimony. But as far as everybody else, so then he could marry. They could marry her on the testimony of somebody that says, "I killed him." If he killed him, so then you're a Retzach, so you're not a kosher aid. So that's the kasha on the Tanna Kama. I'm very happy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what we're learning from this homosexual.
That the person cannot testify that he agreed. He said,
I did it
the Ratzon, so then he's
considered a Russian.
And he can't be a witness. He can't testify against that attack.
You can't trust the aid in the first case, the original case.
No. The whole Mishnah is talking about that the aid is a kosher aid, but we don't let him utilize the testimony for his own benefit. So if he testified that the husband died, he didn't do anything. Right. But he can't marry her. That's good. That makes sense. Yeah. He testifies his husband died, so she can get married because the testimony that the husband died. But he cannot marry her because he has a But here we're talking about, is it a good testimony at all? He says not that he died. I killed him. So if you killed him, so then Bezdin says, if you kill him, then you're not a kosher raid. We can't accept your testimony.
Right.
So that's the most kasha. Tanakama says that even if it's not only he died, I killed him, is also a testimony that she can get married, just he cannot marry her. It shouldn't be a good testimony at all.
We want to say that it seems to be half of half acceptable. Acceptable in terms of her getting married. She's not.
And that's the
giving up
kasha.
without-
That's the kasha. Rav Yosef says that you don't accept it. If someone says that I did an avera, the testimony is not good. His testimony is not accepted because he's a Russia. You might say that over there it's only by edus daraisa, some kind of edus to kill somebody. But here, the witness to permit a woman to get married is more lenient. As we said, the reason why it's more lenient is because she does the investigation on her own. So it could be that we'll make her more on the testimony to permit a woman to get married. Maybe we'll make her that even though he's saying that he's a Russian, maybe we're going to accept the testimony. But no, Rabbi Nasha says not. Rabbi Nasha, Gazlan the Devrayim kosher leidusisha. Gazlan the Debei Torah, Apostle Leidusisha. If it's only a Gazlan Drabanan, there's some things called Gzela Drabanan. That on the rice level is not considered a Gzela. So, no, I think that's the rice maybe, but I think let's say a case of gamblers, things like that, that they might be considered a Gazlan Drabanan. Does Rashi bring any example? Yeah, Rashi says gamblers and horse races, things like that. That's considered Gazlan the Drabanan. So then he's kosher he's still kosher to testify a woman could get married. Umeko on the testimony that's usually possible, midrabanan, but Gazlan the Debei Torah, but a Gazlan the Raisa that's really possible with the Raisa, then we don't accept him even for Edus Isha. So even for this Edus to testify. So if Rabbi Nash is right, that even on a drabba, even Edus Isha also has to have kosher witnesses, and we don't say the difference. So then we shouldn't trust this aid. If he says I killed your husband, we shouldn't trust him, and he shouldn't be allowed to marry anybody. Name of Rav Menashe, Damak Rav Yehuda. Maybe it comes out that Rav Yehuda, so that we don't see a way how to reconcile the Tanakama with what we're saying. Here we're saying that aid is possible, and Rav Menashe says that even Fei Desishi, psul is possible, and it seems that Tanakama says not like that. Tanakama Namisha says you do trust it's a good testimony. It's not just good for him personally. He can't marry her, but everybody else could marry her. So that seems not to fit. Rav Menashe who said this seems to hold like Rav Yehuda, that in our Mishnah says that it's not acceptable. That's how much the point that Mishnah is arguing about. Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda, I'm not arguing about this point. Tanakama says it is a good testimony that he shouldn't marry her. Rabbi Yehuda says not a good testimony at all. And the Gemara is asking that it shouldn't be a good testimony at all. And that seems like Rabbi Yehuda. Amalacha Rabbi Nash, and Adam Afilu the Rabbanan, time of the Rabbanan, Nafa, Kidirava, Damarava, Adam Karbaitz Alatzmo, Buena Damesim Asma Russia. So the Gemara says Rabbi Nasha could say, I hope even like the Rabbanan that it's kosher over here, that it is a good Eidos. And the question was, you asked me kasha from Rabbi Yosef. I thought I don't like Rabbi Yosef. I hold like Rabbi. It means it's a machlokas. Well, we said before about Tony Ravani Litzoni that the person said, I agree to the homosexuality, and now I'm coming to the Bezdin to kill the one who did it. So Rabbi Yosef said we can't accept this testimony because the Shitaso, we listen to him and he says that he's a Russia. So then we can't accept him as a kosher aid. Rabbi says, what Chaim David started saying in English, we hear half a story. Falgina Dibura. So that's what Rabbi holds. Rabbi holds we hear half a story. That means he says that the testimony you say about yourself, you're not trusted. You can't testify on yourself on Bezdin. So when he says Ploni Ravani Liritzoni, we only hear Ploni Ravani. We don't hear Liritzoni. That's not. We tell him it's not your business to say testimony about yourself. You're not believed on yourself. So even when he says Liritzoni, we don't hear him. See here also when he says I killed him, we don't hear the part that he killed him. We hear the part that he was killed. It's not a question of hearing one word or the other word. Here there's no word, but it means we don't hear the part that he said he's the one who killed him. We don't listen to that. We just listen to the part that he said that he was killed by somebody, and that's why the Rabbanan hold that it's a kosher testimony. It's a kosher testimony because we don't believe in this Russia. Rav Yosef will say not. Rav Yosef. Who's that? Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says that you do listen to him, that he's a puzzle aid. So you can accept the testimony. Rabbi says we don't listen to him to that part that he's testifying about himself. So you do listen to the testimony. And that's like the Tanakama. The Master Kasha, Rav Yosef, Damak Rav Yehuda. Now it comes out the other way. Rav Yosef is the one who said that you do listen to his testimony on himself. It becomes a puzzle. He's puzzling himself by saying that I did an Avera. So he seems to only hold like Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Tanakama over here says, you do listen to the testimony that I killed him. How come? Rav Yosef should have said, if you killed him, so you're a Seir, so you're puzzle late. So the Gemara says, Rav Yosef, Rabbanan, Vishani Eidasicha Dakilu Barabanan. Rav Menashe Damak Rav Yehuda means these are two Amoraim here, so they're not obligated to each other. Rav Yosef says that I hold that I'm right, that you listen to the whole testimony and he's possible, he's not a good aid. He's not a kosher. And how come over here, Tanakam is that now? So we tell Rav Yosef, you're very good to Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says that you throw the whole testimony out. But Rav Banan seem to argue on you. The Rav Banan say you do listen to the testimony. So Rav Yosef will say that Edus Isha is different. That Edus Isha, the Edus to permit a woman to get married were more lenient. Not like Rav Menashe said. Rav Menashe on top of the page said that Gazlan Divrei Torah, we don't trust even for Edus Isha. And we said before, we accepted that as a fact of Menashe. Now the Gemara is saying, no, Rav Yosef says I don't agree with that. I hold that the Tanakhama is saying that by Edus Isha you could be lenient and trust even Edim that are puzzle. Rav Menashe is the top line. Yeah. He's the one who said that you don't trust even for Edus Isha. You might think that by Edus Isha we're more makel because she's going to investigate on her own, because we're going to throw the book at her if she comes back, if the husband comes back. So there might be a tzad to be lenient and to accept even puzzle Edim. Rav Menashe said not. Gazlan the Devrei kosher, Gazlan the Devrei Torah puzzle. That you don't trust puzzle Edim. So the whole thing is, how are we going to reconcile Rav Yosef with the Rabbanan? Rav Yosef is the one who says that you throw out the whole testimony. If he says he's a Russia on himself, he says on himself, I'm a Russia, we throw out the whole testimony. He doesn't hold it as Palgina Dibur. He doesn't hold it only half a sentence. Rabbi holds you to hear half a sentence, and you take the testimony that you want to, and you leave out the part that he can't say on his own. Rav Yosef holds that you hear the whole thing, and he's a apostle. He apostled himself. So the one's trying to reconcile Rav Yosef with the Rabbanan. And our Mishnah, if I have a chart, I didn't make any chart, but the machlokas we're talking about, Namish seems to boil down to Rabbanan and Rav Yehuda. They're talking about this subject. If someone says, I killed, do we hear the testimony that the man is dead or not? According to Rav Yosef, you don't hear the testimony because he said he's a Russia. You killed, you're a Tzayach. According to Rava, you do listen to the testimony. There seems to be machlokas, Rabbanan and Rav Yehuda. Rabbanan and Amish say that you do hear the testimony and she can marry out, she can marry somebody. And Rav Yehuda said not. Rav Yehuda said that she cannot marry anybody because he's a Russia. So the Gemara says that Rav Yosef will say that really you don't hear the testimony of Yehuda's right, but Rabbanan here say it's different because it's only Edus Isha that will more makel because the woman is going to investigate on her own, so we'll make the Mikabel believe in Edus that's possible. And Rav Menashe, who says that we don't trust Edim Psulim even by Edus Isha, he's going to say that Rav Yosef's wrong. He's going to say like Rava, that we do hear half a statement, Rabban hold that we hear half a statement. The Gemara continues. Haraktiv, Haragnu. So Rav Yehuda, who says that you don't listen to the aid because since he says that I'm a Russia, so we can't trust him. But he says there's a difference between if I killed him or we killed him. And the Gemara doesn't know what the difference is. What's the difference if you killed him personally or a few people killed him together? What's the difference? Rav Yehuda, not that he says that when he says we killed him, it doesn't mean that I killed him. I wasn't part of the group, but I didn't personally kill him. I was part of that band of murderers. I was with them, but not that I killed. And he's not saying that he's a Russia. He's not saying. But what's that?
What does it mean with Russia Mechabli?
If he's saying that I am a murderer, so then we don't listen to him. But if he didn't say that, he just said I was with them. But Tanya over here means as a proof. It doesn't mean a kasha. This is going to be b'nichus. Rashi doesn't say it, but that's what comes out over here. That he's bringing a proof to what he says. Amru Lad Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'aseh B'lista Mecha Chasa Lehoreg B'Megizas Kaputkia, V'amar Lehem Lechu Imu Le'Eisha Shimon Ben Kohen, Ani Arakti as Ba'ala B'Chnisasi Lelud, V'amri Lo B'Chnisasa Lelud. V'Yisir Sishta. They asked the kasha. The Rabbanan asked the kasha to Rabbi Yehuda that you're saying that you don't trust the person who says that I killed. You don't trust him. Again, what did I just say? That Rabbanan say that you do trust him. If someone said that I killed, you trust him. You just don't. He can marry, but you do trust him. Everybody else, she's a free woman. She could marry. And Rabbi Yehuda said no. Ironically, you can't trust him because he's saying that he's a Russian. So the Rabbanan wanted to prove to Rabbi Yehuda that they're right. They said the story was in the listim. There was a listim. A listim is a armed robber that was being killed. He was being killed by the government in Megizas Kaputkia. There's a place, Cappadocia. Megizas, they say like Yavarim, like maybe they say translate as a Ma'avar. But anyway, in a certain place, they say it's in Turkey. And he said, when he's going to be killed, he said, tell the wife of Shimon ben Cohen that I killed her husband. and the entrance to Lud, or when he was coming into Lud. Anyway, before he was going to be killed, executed, he said, tell his wife that he's dead. I killed him. But you see, was Ishto, and Bezdin allowed her to get married because of that testimony. So the Rabbanan say to Rabbi Yehuda, you see, even if somebody said Harakti, you still trust him.
Yeah, but Rabbi, here the nafka is that he's going to be killed. He's got nothing to gain.
No difference. If you say that he's a Rotzer, so then you say that he's a Russian, you can't trust him. He's saying that if he's saying that he's a Russia, then you don't trust him.
Did I say that he's about to get killed? He's doing tshuva.
He killed. Can a person do tshuva when
because he's out to, he's finished now. There's no way out for him now. He's going to get killed. So he wants to do one good deed and maybe free the woman from.
So you're asking, he's saying, how is it that a person who's a murderer that he could become kosher? Could he become kosher ever if he does? Could he prove tshuva in a way to become kosher? Okay, maybe put it on the side. So you see, the Rabbanan said to Rabbi Yehuda, you see that you do trust a person who said, I killed. He said, no, that wasn't the case. The case wasn't that he said, I killed. He said, I was together with those that killed him, but not that I killed him. This is the proof we wanted to bring, that he didn't say, we killed him. He says, I was with the ones who killed. This is what Rabbi Yehuda's shita is, that if he says, I wasn't there, then okay, I was there, but I didn't kill him.
So that got to we killed him. As opposed
that's trying we killed him. When it says in the Mishnah, we killed him, it means we, the band, but not that I killed him. I was with him. Well, listim katani. It says over there that he was a list. It says in the Bryce he was a listim. He was the armed robber. No, shenit fasal yidei listias. He was seized. He was caught together with that group. It says they was going to be killed. It means that he was found to be a murderer. No, Bedina the Goyim, the Lo Daiki Bakati. It wasn't a Jewish Bezdin that only would have killed if he was the murderer. It was the Goyish Bezdin that they killed the whole group. If they found a group of murderers, they killed the whole group. But the case was that he didn't say that I killed. He says I was with them, but I didn't kill. So that's the pshat. So back to the Mishnah, Tanakama. Everybody says that the person who testified, if we see any ulterior motive, that we're not going to let him do that. Means we're not going to let him marry if he testified before nechtam. If he says that he died, so we're not going to let him marry on account of his testimony. We don't let him benefit from his testimony. But the rest of the Mishnah Gemara goes into the fact that you do trust him for everybody else, that he's a good testimony, even though he says that I killed. So that's Machlokas Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, and Tanakama. Either the Pshat and Tanakama, why do they rely on it over here? Either because it's Eida Sisha, or because you say Paginu Dibura, and you don't hear that the part that he said that I killed, only that the man was killed. And Rabbi Yehuda himself that says that you don't accept the testimony, even by Eida Sisha, and you don't say Paginu Dibura, but
this is completely on.
You don't trust it at all. You don't trust him as an aid. But he himself says, if I was there, he doesn't say I killed, we killed. He says that there was a group of people that killed. I didn't kill. So then you do trust him. Next Mishnah, other similar related topics about not benefiting from a psak. Before we said not benefiting from a testimony. Here's a case: a chacham shaser esisha beneder al bala. A woman made a neder that some kind of affliction to herself, and they're looking for a Torah Nedorim. The husband was very concerned. If she doesn't get a heter, he's going to divorce her. If she wants to live like this, he doesn't want to be married to her. And they went to the chacham, and the chacham couldn't find the heter. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't see any way out. I don't see a halachic way out of the neder." And then the husband divorced her, and then the chacham wants to marry her. Doesn't look good. Now it could be that it's true. It doesn't necessarily mean that he did bad, but it doesn't look good. It looks like maybe the reason why he didn't find that is because he wanted to marry her. That it shouldn't be bad news, shouldn't be bad rumors that Rav had an interest in not finding an heter. If there was a miyun done, that means a woman. Well, what is miyun? We had it before that if a girl gets married as a youngster, that not the father married her off, but the brother, the mother herself, that she's only kedushin d'Rabbanan. So we said that as long as she's still a ketana, she could just refuse and say I want out. So she does.
Father or brother.
A father makes kedushin d'Oraisa. A father has a right to marry off his daughter even when she's a ketana, and it's kedushin d'Oraisa. But all the cases, and then there's no me, and then she needs a get. There's a regular marriage. But even though she doesn't have das, the father has das. But if there's no father around and she gets married, it's only kedushin d'Rabbanan. And then she does me, and then she wants out. It's supposed to be done in front of a bezdin. It's done in front of a bezdin. And here there was one of the bezdin that was part of that bezdin, and then he wants to marry her. So it doesn't look so bad. Why not? Because it's not done by himself. It's not a one-man job. You have to have three people. And they should bezdin. So there's no bad rumors. Nothing to do with the fact there was three people. They're not going to be part of the bezdin in order to encourage the miyun. If doesn't have effect on them. So since it's a business,
He's one of the three.
he's one of the three, so it doesn't look bad. Or shecholza b'fanav chalitza also. If there was a chalitza, then someone wants to marry her, so there's no problem because it's a bezdin. A bezdin accepts the chalitza, does the chalitza. So therefore, there's no chashad on one of them that would marry her.
Yeah, he's lying.
The Gemara says, the Brisa says that chacham shasar, like as if it's a one-man job, that the chacham is the one who's going to decide if he can be matar or neder or not. The Gemara has a problem. They usually need a bezdin. You need a bezdin to be matar neder. It sounds like that if it wouldn't have asked her, but if he would have been matar, he would have found it. Then eventually the husband divorced her for a different reason. He could marry. One of the chacham could have married. What's the case? One man, three people. One person can't be matar neder. You need three people. It's not talking about one person. Not talking about one person. About three people.
Yeah.
If it's talking about three people, then even if he answered her, if he didn't find, let's say you have a case we had a bezdin and she came to be mataneh, then they weren't able to find the heter. All three people weren't able to find the heter. So you're going to say you can't marry? One of the people can't marry. You said a second ago, but Tanan, the Mishnah says we have three people that are doing the job, so then we're not choshed everybody that they're doing it for, that one of them should be able to marry. So by Hataras Nadam, since you have to have three, so how could the Mishnah say that if he wasn't able to find the heter, he cannot marry her? There are three people over there. Three people weren't able to find the heter. You look at this trouble.
I'm sorry.
The Mishnah says that
I
if
thought we were
the
talking about a chacham who was able to have to matzir neder.
you know the maskana already. We don't know it yet.
So what do you think? So where
The Gemara thinks you have to have three people. You know that you can have one person. We don't know that yet. That's you're confused because you know the maskana already. We don't know that. We don't. And the Havamina, we know that Het and the Dam has to have three people. So if there are three people, so then it doesn't make sense that the Mishnah says he can't marry her, because if there are three people, the Mishnah says at the end, we don't suspect the whole bezdin isn't on it. So if you have a bezdin of three people and they weren't to find the heter for this woman and the husband had divorced her, so one of them should be able to. The Mishnah is about there's only one chacham, because sometimes even one chacham also could do ataros nedarim. If he's an expert, a mumcha, so then even one person can also do ataros nedarim. That's the case of one Mishnah. Then if there would have been three, so then he would be able to marry her, even if he wasn't able to marry. Yeah, no, shecholza. It says that's the bezdin from Yom Chalitz. Also, one of the rabbanim could marry because there's the bezdin, three people. So it's not a chash that they did it with some ulterior motive. Timer the bezdin, how betrayed law, especially only because you have three. But if you have two people, that's not enough. We're still going to suspect what's the deal, because that's only because you have a bezdin. Because you find that even two people also you don't suspect. Where do you find that? That if the witnesses that were signed on a sale of a field, and then one of them wants to buy it from the purchaser, from the one who bought it. So we don't say, oh, you did it. The whole thing was only a fraud because you wanted to buy it. So you said they made up the contract, and it's not really true. The seller never sold it, and you can't buy it from the buyer. Also, al gerisha. Before we spoke about the shliach, who said but how about the witnesses that are signed on it? Could he marry her?
With two witnesses.
There's two witnesses. And then one of the witnesses wants to, she got divorced, and he was a witness about a divorce, and then he wants to marry her. Is there any problem?
Sounds good.
It sounds good. Why does it sound good? Because there are two people. Yeah, but now we don't know. Does he have?
Huh?
Maybe ulterior motive. We're not talking about if it's a good get. We're talking about do we allow him to marry? Do we say that he had ulterior motive in the get? And that maybe it wasn't a good. You don't say that because there are two ways to me. It means the other aid wouldn't have been on it if it wasn't true. If it's a person who comes by himself, the shliach, it's a one-man job that he comes. So then we can say that maybe he has some ulterior motive. And maybe you see he married her at the end, maybe it wasn't a good shlichus testimony. But over here, the Gemara is saying that witnesses on the get, they could marry her because there's no shad, because there are two. So you see that two, you don't need three. And it's just much only when there are three is there no suspicion, and two is not enough. The Gemara answers.
You need to have a majority of those who are straight on the issue.
And the Gemara says, and the Gemara is asking,
and the third one,
and the Gemara is asking that.
So you still have two that are.
Yes. No, we're not saying that he's not a good aid. We're saying that if there are three people in on it, so we're not close to anybody. All of them are allowed to marry her. Any one of the three. But the Gemara is asking that you see by two, that even two is also enough to show that there's no messing around. The Gemara is asking that not talking about how many are left. Maybe you mean But not that one is down, it means that we're not going to be choshed anybody, because if there are 2 people or 3 people over here, so we see that it was a serious matter. And therefore, any one of them is allowed to marry. And the one is asking, why does it say? Because of a bezdin, it sounds like you have 3, then is no suspect. Even if you have 2, it's also not a suspicion. The Marin says you're right. That really, you're right, 2 is enough. It doesn't say over here because there are 3, because there are 3. If there'd be 2, we wouldn't trust. 2 would also would have been enough. But the Mishnah happens to hold that mian has to have 3 people. Well, that's going to be a subject that he says, machlokes, how many people do you have to do mian in front of the girl who says, I don't want him anymore? You have to have a 2 to say 2 or 3. So it happens to be Mishnah holds 3. But at the time, if it would have been 2, it also would have been true that he wouldn't be any suspicion on him and he'd be allowed to marry. Iboilu, konas. How far should we go? Let's see if I can. Iboilu, konas marashi yotzi. This person, we said, when there's a suspicion, we said they shouldn't marry. What if he did? All these cases where there was a suspicion. And we say, not a suspicion. It's a little funny that he's the one who was, it looks like he had ulterior motive in divorce. So what if he did marry? He shouldn't have, but he did marry. We forced him to divorce. These questions of ulterior motive. So if Kana Makanas Mosi, Ravashi Makanas Aina Mosi. Machlokas Amaram. If Kana says yes, divorce even with the Eved. Ravashi says no. Even though he should marry, if he did, we're not going to force him to divorce. Tani Lahu Rav Zuti, but the baby Rav Papi, but the baby Omer, Kedivi Omer Kanas Aina Mosi. Rav Zuti, but said over the Brisa seems to be that he said Aina Mosi. Amalei, like Ravashi says. Amalei Ravashi Gemara Sfara. Are you getting it from a tradition, or that's your svara, your reasoning? Amalu masnisi avaraya. Hanita me shefcha v'nishtachva me'goya v'nistagaira ve'ezal yichnas v'kana seina motzi. The fact that there's going to be a bad rumor, bad noise, that's not enough reason to make him divorce. It means the case of the person who was suspected that he had relations with a shifcha or goya, so he's saying lachatchila don't marry. But if he did, he stays married. And we're not going to say that it doesn't sound good, so make it. Over there, it's not a basis ish where you should really this thing out. But it's only it doesn't look good. It also doesn't look good. It doesn't look good that he didn't find the heter. It doesn't look good, but it doesn't mean that it was a puzzle marriage. It means that he had maybe had ulterior motive in being part of this, but not that something's puzzled because of it. So for that bad rumor, it's only a reason that we say don't marry, but it's not a reason to make him divorce if he did marry her. Yashikol, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
What was the last line there? Baranana. You did the last line on the next page.
Yes, that the word Renana means like a bad rumor, a bad name. So that's the Mishnah. The one brings a proof from the case of the Reish of our Mishnah that somebody, what was the case again? That he was a rumor going around that he had relations with a Goya, and she converted. So we say don't marry her. Why not to marry her? Even if it was true, he's allowed to marry her. Even if he had relations with her as a Goya, now she converted. He's allowed to, but it doesn't look good. It makes a bad name for himself. That it's machazek, it's reinforcing the rumor. So that's the reason why we say don't marry. But it's not a reason to say if he did marry, we're not going to say so. We're not going to say post facto because it's not. It's only a bad name. So for a bad name, we say stay away from a bad name. But if he did,
we don't see.
Say the divorce. Here, all these people over here, the chacham, even if they had an ulterior motive in doing this get, or it's still not. Doesn't make it puzzle. It's still a true thing. It was not nice, maybe, but it's not going to be that it's a puzzle that he's also to marry her. So therefore, but if he married her, he doesn't have to divorce her.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.